So there we go. Whoop, 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 whoop. So number one, everyone should be muted if you're connected through Teams. And then, of course, out here, don't talk. So initially, we're going to have two speakers. You know, they will come up here and start the conversation. Okay. And then if you want to speak, this is from the COVID times, so I didn't update it before I got here. So now I have to do that on the fly. You just walk up here. Sorry, if you're online, it's kind of hard for you to participate. You'll just have to
No,
listen
we're
in.
gonna make it happen.
Are we?
Yeah, I'm letting them know right now.
But how does someone ask them to sit down?
They can kick it off.
They're gonna ask me, I will
Go ahead.
proxy seat for them, and then they can
Oh, okay. You are gonna get exercise tonight. Yay.
Yeah.
Someone like undoes the message and they're just like kidding with you.
They'll make time go by faster.
So you should wait when someone comes up here. If you're gonna sit down, let whoever's talking finish their thought unless they're going on forever. And then one of us, you know, or a moderator of some sort is gonna be like, hey, you guys sit down. Usually it doesn't happen, but yeah. And that's basically it. Rinse, repeat. You want to talk, come up here. If you want to learn and not talk, stay over there, stay online. Yay. Okay. So do we have volunteers? Oh, I mean, I'll go up first because I know I came up with the topic, so I'm gonna. Yeah.
Jump up. Yeah,
All right.
you and Ari.
And your name again?
Alex.
Alex. Perfect. All right. I'm gonna keep my video on, but. Stop sharing the screen. Does it see everyone okay? Can it?
Yeah.
Does it?
Sit down, I'll adjust it.
Nice. Look at that. It just keeps on going and going.
Into infinity and beyond.
All right.
Sit down.
There you go. Okay. Hey, what's up, Alex?
Hello.
Hey, what about AI, man?
What about AI? So I'm a little worried about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And especially GitHub Co-Pilot X version, GitHub Co-Pilot.
That's the paid for one, right?
The Co-Pilot is the paid one. The X version is the next one coming up.
Oh, okay. What?
So currently ChatGPT is just for whatever you give it currently, but with Copilot X, it takes the whole context of your project code. So if
Oh, thank you.
if it can do this, then it could potentially even write its own stuff, because with ChatGPT, it's general, it's all kinds of data, but with Copilot X, it's specific to coding, and it knows the context within what you're writing. So it knows every single file, every single line you write in that specific project. So that's a worry to me.
Why?
Because I think it really takes out a lot of junior developers, because I think most junior developers are doing like the boring task, the basic tasks, and with Copilot X, it does that instantly, even better than ChatGPT. So yeah.
Yeah. So I've been thinking the same thing. But at the same time, I'm wondering if that's a good thing. I mean, not that getting rid of junior developers is bad, but if it's mostly boilerplate code, and you get the gist of what the boilerplate code does, you can work on more interesting problems more quickly. You know, like give me a form that has a username and password field. Okay, I'm gonna go do that. And most tools today will automate a bunch of that stuff for you. You know, for example, it's a template. So there's a lot of code that you don't write anyway. And that hasn't gotten rid of junior developers. I need, I don't know, a regex written that does something that I need done. So I know what I want to build, but I don't know regex. Write me a regex that does this. Cool, now I can move forward. So my job got easier because of these large language models. Be it ChatGPT or Google's Bard, right? And like even like a few days ago, I played around with it. I trained on just like 14 pages on my website, and then so its only context was my site.
Yeah.
Not my code.
Yeah.
But because I won't do that because I don't want to give that to the rest of the world. But it gave me all this information about me. Some of it was wrong, right? And that would be interesting to see how a junior developer works with it, because what I've noticed about junior developers, not all of them, but many of them will blindly go to Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
That's the first thing they get, right? And then they copy that code and paste it into their project. They don't understand at all how it works, right? And then, but it compiles, and then they run it, and they're like, oh, it's doing what I want. Yeah, but they don't know what they just added. So I have a feeling like they're going to do the same thing here, but maybe contextually it'll be better, because they were able to define the parameters, or give them a new thing to debug. But I was playing around with it. I mean, I'm a senior developer, but there was something I didn't know how to do. I went to ChatGPT and I said, write me a function that does this. Like in my head, I knew what I needed. And then, okay, give me a function that does this. And it wrote it.
Yes.
I'm like, sweet. I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't perfect. Like I could tell, here's the things I'm going to have to change. The variable names weren't the best, but it was still pretty good. And then I was like, oh, take that and do this to it. And it did it. I was like, holy shit. I mean, this changes the game. And now I've got free code that does what I want, and now I can move forward with the rest of my day and like do all the other stuff that I do know how to do. Because there's no creativity. I had to give it a prompt and then it wrote something, but it didn't have any creativity. It didn't go, oh well, here's how you would write an application that does, like give me an application that does something similar to Facebook and Instagram, mixed with YouTube and Threads. Throw trillions of dollars of companies at it. Now write the code. It'll be like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you, because it can't be creative. But if I said, give me a login screen that looks similar to the 4 of these, maybe it'll figure it out. But I don't know if
But that's because ChatGPT doesn't have the full context of your code. So yeah, it could do basic things like create functions for this specific, that, and this. But if it knows the full context of your whole application, it could reference different parts of the files and then make relevant changes error-free, because it knows everything else in your code, not just a prompt that you gave it. So with ChatGPT, it doesn't know everything else that you're working with, because there's probably hundreds of folders and hundreds of files. But Copilot X, it knows everything inside your project. So yeah.
But what's the bad part about that?
Again, who needs junior developers then, right?
Well, that's
who
a great.
needs 5 senior developers? You can just have 1, and then that guy can just automate Copilot X to do everything, because Copilot X knows the whole context of the project, every single line.
True, but the hundreds of files that are there with all the images and the CSS and the design that's been done and the multiple languages of JavaScript and C# and whatever, someone built that. That wasn't built by AI.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, someone had a vision to build whatever that is. I'm sure it's got bugs. So I mean, the computer didn't do that.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT probably couldn't like wire it all together, because it has to be prompted to be creative, right? So I think junior developers given a task, I guess given the context of it, if you're given a simple task, I could see it doing it. But, like, let's say you had to build a page that handles an order form for our particular customer,
Mhm.
And you've got a spec. I mean, you could go through the model and be like, okay, well, I've got the requirements over here in Jira or ADO or whatever, and I need to build let's say I need to build a report. Well, I can't go to ChatGPT and say, hey, go read the specifications and create the report. Well, at least I can't yet.
Yeah.
Right? And give it in a format that my boss wants. And that should be Excel and PDF. I don't know how creative it would be, but as a junior developer, you could say, okay, well, I'm going to start on this. I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to go build a whole bunch of HTML because I don't know how to create a PDF, but HTML is easy to build, and you can output HTML very easily as a string formatting, function. So you'd write that, write it up, and then you'd be like, hey, ChatGPT, given the libraries that I have available in my project, I want to export this as a PDF. And it'll say, well, I don't have that, but you could use this library. Okay. Well, now I've added this library. Now take this code and I want you to take its output. I want you to put it into a PDF for me using that library. Now your job's done. I mean, you could have done it yourself and learned something along the way. Or you could let it do it and analyze the code, find out if it's got bugs in it, because it's an interpretation of what you wanted, right? So if anything, you're forced to do a code review, which means you have to understand the code. You can't just blindly accept whatever Copilot X builds, right? Yeah. It's not guaranteed to be right. It'd be just as bad as copy and pasting from Stack Overflow. So you haven't lost your job. If anything, you've been given a coworker. You have to look at their code and see if you need to fix it. And think about it in the big picture of the application, which it may know what all the code is, but it doesn't know what the original vision was. And that'd be my guess. I don't think a bunch of junior developers are out of a job yet. Yeah, but maybe, I mean, in 10 years.
Maybe 10.
I don't know.
I really don't know.
So, that was something that I'm curious about, because it's interesting, like from a business standpoint.
Yeah, because you would save so much money.
Oh yeah, I mean, the people that you wouldn't have to hire, or at least there's the potential, right? And it's like, it'll write all the code for me. What do I need developers for? Yeah, I'll outsource it to the computer. Yeah, but then, I mean, have you had it generate code for you yet?
Which one?
Like ChatGPT
Yes.
or ChatGPT? Oh, is someone joining? Oh, okay. Here. Come out here. I gotta let you answer.
Okay, let me unmute Kenneth here so that you can.
I guess I didn't catch that part, that we could get up there and I was waiting for somebody to
Okay,
stand up.
Kenneth, you can go ahead.
Oh,
and
no, like,
unmute
so if you
yourself.
want to talk, you
Yeah.
go up there and someone has to stand up.
All right. What did you have to share, Kenneth?
Check. Can you hear me? Awesome. So to the question, is it good for our careers? Is it good or bad for our careers? I think it's great for our careers. More abstraction layers, the barrier of entry to other tech stacks is lowered significantly. In terms of in answering the question of whether junior developers would be necessary, I think you can repurpose those junior developers to do something else if the company's smart. But again, that's if people are acting rationally. But who knows? It's true that you probably could get one or two senior developers to do pretty much the job of your entire junior developer team, especially if you're using automated solutions like GPT Engineer or Zapier for automation and stuff like that to automate the prompts. But yeah, Copilot X does changes everything because it reads everything in your entire project. Let's say if I had, I don't know, well, I don't know how good it scales, so that's yet to be seen. So let's say if I had a million line project in Visual Studio Classic and I put Copilot X on it, and just start asking questions, there's nothing. Honestly, I probably wouldn't need to see a developer either at some point in the near future. But again, you can repurpose those people to do other things. I don't know. It could be testing. It could be, I don't know, research in terms of whatever business problems that you're trying to solve. But yeah, I do think it's a good thing. Will we have to retool ourselves as in developers to, um, or another way of asking is, will developers become generalists or prompt engineers? In other words, I think that's kind of like the way that we're going. Not knowing about, or rather, going from process centered to query based or query centered sort of careers. If that makes sense.
Didn't want to interrupt you when they're.
No, you're not interrupting.
Sure. I'm new to this fishbowl format for sure. Okay, cool. So when you talk about junior developers, I understand where there's that fear for sure. And I think what we're talking about is earned learning, right? We've come up, those of us who have done this for many years, we've become experienced developers or senior developers or whatever part you're in your career you are, because of the earned learning that you did. You went through the trenches of figuring things out and solving and so on. But probably very few people in this meeting write in binary. There's abstraction over abstraction. We get higher order languages, and you can look at these tool sets as being higher order languages that we're using and adapting to. I see this with front end developers quite a bit, where there's a reliance on packages, right? There's so much reliance on NPM packages that do the work for you. Very rarely is the first reaction to build everything yourself. It's to maybe go out and look for some open source. But with that library, once you consume it, you do own that end-to-end stack and solution, right? So all problems that you inherit, as well as all problems you create. Same thing with ChatGPT. I don't think it's a smart move or Copilot or anything like that. It certainly is not infallible. In fact, it's wrong lots and lots of times, but it will get better, right? I mean, that's the expectation, that all things will get better. But you still have to fact check it. So.
Comfortable chair.
Yeah, mine was warm still, so it's good.
So, to that end, again, it comes back to, is the way I see it, creativity. That I love that it has the context of your entire application or all of your applications, even better.
Sure.
And partially because I don't know where everybody works, but I don't get unlimited budget and unlimited resources to bring people on. So like as a junior developer, you don't have 20 junior developers unless you're over at Microsoft, and look at the number of cuts they've had. When the economy went sour or went into a recession, they cut tens of thousands of jobs. It wasn't because of ChatGPT. It's, you got to cut the fat. And that wasn't necessarily because of their skill. But usually I find like most businesses in America are small businesses. There's a reason Squarespace is really successful. There's a reason there's contractors out there that people use and then move on with their lives. So yes, I think from like a software engineer's perspective, I'll take a look at it from three different standpoints. One, I need to get something done fast. I don't have the time to do it. This knows a lot more than I do, and it could take care of simple functions for me. So that helps me along in my journey in getting my job done, because that's business is about higher efficiency, lower cost.
Yeah,
it is all day, every day. And don't fool yourself thinking that it's not. That being said, as a software manager and someone in charge of software architecture, I look at a solution like a Copilot X or whatever the competitors, there's going to be a bazillion that use ChatGPT. Copilot X is just going to be one of them. I love the fact that I could say it could automatically analyze my code for security vulnerabilities. It could find SQL injection issues. It could find unused packages and analyze code paths. Things that is the most boring work. And most humans, if not all, would miss at least a significant percentage of issues that I've got in my code. Especially, as like you were saying, bringing in all the JavaScript packages that you got, or all the NuGet packages, because we live in an age that isn't like what we grew up with, for those of us that are over 30, where you had to write your own code. You couldn't just go copy and paste or bring up Stack Overflow or bring in a NuGet package, or there's some JavaScript library that does all the animation for you, and that everything is cloud-based. I remember if I wanted to write a word processor and it did word wrap, I had to write it myself.
Yeah.
It wasn't built into some control I could bring in because I had, 16K to work with, and I was lucky. So, so that's the manager side. So from just a regular engineer side though, or from a junior engineer side, I would think it would help me learn. Like, is there anything wrong with my code?
Sure.
Is
Just like how, static code analysis, right?
Yeah.
Things that are going to prompt you into the right way to write code, or at least suggestions onto how to write your code.
Mhm.
That's a good way to learn, is to see good code written, right?
Mhm.
But more so, not just good code written syntactically,
Mhm.
also the outcome of it. I saw that there was a performance increase, when we did this. I saw that memory consumption was, better with this result versus this result, So I think anything that you're taking, it behooves you to learn more about the why and what you're selecting, right?
Yeah.
And most of the people here are engineers, so having a more analytical way of looking at that, try both of them and see. If it is relatively cheap to develop because the speed has increased so much, because you get the performance boost of ChatGPT giving you a couple different answers, then try a couple different answers and see which ones work better. Classic A/B testing and so on, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a good way to learn as well. And then you get that earned learning, even if you're not the one punching keys quite as much.
Right. Yeah. And to add to that, let me finish my thought real quick.
You want to go or me? Either one.
I don't care. But the point is, as a junior developer, you could say, okay, I'm looking at your code example. And let's say it just did string arithmetic, right? It added strings together, plus equals, plus equals, plus equals, blah, blah, blah. You could say, show me what this would look like with a string builder.
Mm-hmm.
Show me what this would look like if I did it this way or that way. So you could try different approaches, see what the code would look like. And, eventually we're going to be able to run code this way as well and say, which would be the most performant of the 4 things that we just looked at? Eventually that's what you're going to get to. And what that would take you, as a junior developer, or even me as a senior developer, hours to write all the different variations and then run them and try them and test them and put all the numbers together. But if I go and I tell it, write the code, run it, tell me what the speed is through the examples we just went through before I ever actually wrote any code and spent my time, let's say I'm $250 an hour. Look at the thousands of dollars I just saved and frustration. So, just keep that in mind.
Switch next time.
So this is actually me, not somebody online. So I need one of you tech guys to come save me shortly. Recruiters can only go so deep into this. But so the original concern was that ChatGPT would take over the junior spots. My argument against that would be that there's 2 pieces that are going to keep that from happening. First, ChatGPT is not any better than an intern as far as the amount of work that you can give it right now. Like what you can give it. You can give it a simple, go check this, go look for these things and see what it returns. which is really what you're doing with an intern, right? Somebody who is still in a boot camp, still in school, still learning. The difference is that you can control what the intern learns. You do not control what ChatGPT learns. ChatGPT learns from the general community. And unfortunately, the general community for this is the internet, which is a dark and disgusting place, right? So they recently released, ChatGPT does artwork. They recently released ChatGPT artwork that showed what it thinks people look like in every state. There were only 2 states with African Americans, according to this. There were no states with anyone of Asian descent. So it's looking at the information that's going in. The information is so biased and coming from so many odd places to be the best. A lot of it, truthfully, is coming from Reddits and things. And the information in, we all know, every programmer in here knows, good information in, good information out, crap in, crap out, right? So you can teach a intern, you can teach a person. This is not learning in the way that we need to, and it's not taking out that bias.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're introducing a pretty large topic, bias in AI, right? I mean, that's always going to be something. But yeah, there is reinforced learning, right? There is the intention that, you know, more data, larger data sets beget, you know, larger possibilities and more outcomes that people like versus dislike. And if there's, you know, reinforced learning of saying what is a good outcome, what is a bad outcome, the intent is over time, then better outcomes survive and worse outcomes fall away, right? So even if the outcomes today are not, you know, super great in some situations, the, you know, over time it should kind of fix itself out. Now, whether I think the broader than topic is societally, are we like, you know, polluted as a society? I mean, do we reinforce, like, you know, do we reinforce the bias? You know, right? And so in our reinforcement, we can bias exaggerative even more,
right,
versus, you know, corrective bias, right? So, but, you know, we are all humans. And
but then you have the issue of each domain. You know, if you work in ABC company, what you want people to be learning and the growth pattern that you have planned for them is different from the next company over. So if we're talking about that learning from entry level on, it's better to have a real person, and you are teaching them and growing your team in the way that you want and taking out that bias because you're teaching them your culture and your way of doing things within your domain.
I don't see how ChatGPT or any of this has really taken away the HR structure of, you know, supervisors and working in a team and collaborative environment. You know, so there's still people involved in this. You know, whether at least where we're at today, I think it's more of, you know, a replacement to Stack Overflow in some cases. I think that was kind of an interesting, you know, statement. Yeah. It was probably pretty true, but I guess where it progresses will be a question. But, you know, I can't see a situation where we want to remove the human element out of work.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is, I don't think it's ever really going to replace the junior. It will change what the junior does.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of scut work that you give the junior right now. And you can take that away, and instead of, you know, look through all of this and find the one line of code that's missing something, we can feed the boring work into ChatGPT and let the junior learn something. My argument would be that it's not going to replace the junior, it's going to let the junior advance so much faster because they're not doing administrative stuff.
So when we hire juniors, which we hire mostly senior folks, but when we do hire juniors, and we have a sample size that's not very big, but it's about 40 engineers that are at my company. When I bring them in and we start giving out work to juniors, it is generally, in most cases, the same work as seniors. The difference between a junior and senior oftentimes is they can type as much code and they can produce as much output and they can solve problems just like a senior can. However, they don't know necessarily when they're off the rails or when a solution is bad. I think you become a senior because you make a lot of mistakes down the road and see what didn't work out. You wrote some really poor performing database transactions, and now you realize, oh, I shouldn't do it like that anymore, right? So you learn as you go. Seniors in most, at least in our company, tend to more help people out of problems as opposed to overproduce or that, which means you still need juniors. Come on up here and take my spot. But you still need juniors. They're still going to produce output, and through their mistakes, they will become, senior as well.
So then would you suggest, would you suggest using ChatGPT be a tool that your juniors are using? Hey, before you go.
Oh, I think ChatGPT should be a tool that everybody's using, seniors, juniors, whoever it may be. And I think it is a tool if we can, so this might be just a slightly longer answer, but speaking from the
That's okay, he can have my.
Speaking from the, but I don't want to dominate. Speaking from an owner of our company as well as an engineer, as an owner, we want to make people be as fast as possible and productive as possible. And we spend a lot of money on engineering, right? 40 engineers, at least for me, is a lot of freaking money. But if they can do, 1.25%, 2 times work output, 2x output, 3x output, that's amazing. We used to talk about 10x engineers, right? Everybody heard that term before, 10x engineers? And can we get 10x engineers by coupling skill set and talent with, productivity tools and things like that? That's not a bad thing, to me. So
Right.
You're in. Tag out.
All right.
So I have quite a pessimistic view with using ChatGPT as a tool, especially for junior developers, because I think part of it is banging your head on the table 10,000 times to figure out why you did something wrong. But if you can just type in a prompt to ChatGPT, it's like an instant answer. You will never learn. And I feel like, in my opinion, most junior developers will unfortunately go down this route where they won't bang their heads on the table 10,000 times and will just ask ChatGPT what the right thing to do is and just get done with their day.
Yeah. Well, I think if they weren't going to use ChatGPT, they were going to use Stack Overflow. And to be fair, like ChatGPT, like for code, like I don't even think we'd have this conversation if Stack Overflow didn't already exist. Because I think most of what ChatGPT gets is what's on Stack Overflow already, and probably knows how to use the ratings to figure out what code was good, and combine that with knowledge of how programming works, which is it's fascinating that it can know how to code. I mean, that to me that's amazing. That it learned how to code. Like, well, the societal things are interesting. Because if you have a kid that all they do is listen to the internet all day, But then again, like people go, I don't understand why my feed shows me whatever I see. I'm like, that's because that's what you like. That's why what you're seeing is what you're seeing. But like on this, I have found there's a lot of junior developers, that don't graduate from being a junior. They don't go from junior to intermediate because they don't do well at problem solving, because most of your time you're not writing new code. Most of the time you're fixing code, or trying to make code better, which comes right back down to creativity. You might not have all the answers, just like you were saying about juniors and seniors have been down more paths and failed quickly, that they can share that knowledge and unblock the juniors so the juniors can also be productive. ChatGPT helps you there. I mean, who here is a .NET developer? We're at .NET Consortium, so who's a .NET developer? Okay, how many people fix their code with IntelliSense? Okay, I mean, is IntelliSense a bad thing? Yeah, I'm not yelling. I'm just saying, IntelliSense is using pattern recognition to determine in the code that you've got right now whether this is a bad code path. Like, it can detect it. So, it's built-in code reviews using, kind of AI. ML of some sort, and it's based on its analysis of your entire project at the time, just locally, not externally in the cloud.
Mhm.
And it helps you be a better developer because it's a tool that you use. Going, oh, you have all these. Have you ever used ReSharper? Okay, so forget the speed implications of ReSharper. Once it's loaded in your project, ReSharper makes you a better developer. So if you ever get a chance, if you're a .NET developer, go install JetBrains ReSharper. And you'll be like, holy shit. Yeah, and yeah, send me a message on LinkedIn and tell me if you feel bad using its suggestions, where it says, no. You could get a performance increase by doing this, or this is not the way you should do things because this is a waste of code.
Check for null.
Yeah. This code will never execute, and it just makes it gray. You're like, why did it turn gray? Well, it's because it would never execute. So, yeah, ChatGPT can kind of take some of that stuff to the cloud, and analyze your code and see, obvious issues that are causing performance issues. Does that make you less employable? No. I think you still get to do your job, you still get to write your code. I don't think ChatGPT's broken that for you. Nope.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal a seat here real quick. I taught high school for 5 years, from 2014 to 18, so 4 years. And those students didn't know how to Google shit. During the first 2 weeks of class, I had to say, okay, this is how you Google things, because they didn't know how to do that, right? So, and I recently sat on a panel at Butler where we were talking about AI, and one of the people said, do you think we should let our students, there was a student, do you think we should let our students use ChatGPT? Yes, because in 5 years, when I hire you, I need you to know how to use ChatGPT. I don't want to have to say to you, I don't want you to come to me and say, how do I do this? And I say, did you ChatGPT it? No? Why? Why are you wasting my time with this? Figure it out, right? It already exists. Boilerplate code and all that stuff. So I think it will replace some jobs, right? Just like the fact that my car has a computer in it replaced some jobs. But it didn't get rid of jobs. It just made those jobs different, right? So for the juniors and all those guys, they're just gonna have to learn how to code in a different way, which is fine. One more thing about I went from a junior to a senior very quickly in my career, and I think it's just because I learned quickly. I picked things up, right? But I can tell you, and I haven't had a ton of programming jobs, but I can tell you that I've never had a job where I didn't have to fix someone else's garbage, right? And I don't think that ever goes away. I've never had a job where I didn't look at code and go, oh, what were you thinking? Or this person just went through a class and they learned how to use this method or whatever. And so it's everywhere now when it doesn't apply to half of this stuff. Like it shouldn't have been used in half of these things, right? And so I don't think ChatGPT ruins that for anybody. I think it just makes it so that we don't do those kind of things. So that if suddenly I'm like, oh, look how I can use this program or this package in Python or with this .NET, whatever, and I'll be better for it. And then I use it everywhere when I shouldn't have. I should only use it in 1 or 2 places.
I think I'm more concerned of how it will affect students' abilities to just problem solve, just to fight through it. So for example, one of my professors in physics, he didn't have the internet back then. He just had the library and books. And I think part of why he's so great now is because he spent hours on just reading books. And whenever he did encounter a problem, he'll approach the professor. But most of the time, he's just reading books, banging his head on the desk many times, and problem solving.
Sure.
But with ChatGPT, it's so easy to get an answer given to you. And you can pretend to say, oh, thanks, ChatGPT, for explaining how this works and all the inner workings of this problem, how to think about it. But who is really going to do that?
But So the other problem with large language models are the hallucinations, right? So I don't know if you don't know what a hallucination is.
Yeah, but I think it's going to get much better in
No,
like
they
5
program
years.
from the research that I've read thus far, they make it hallucinate. They tell it to do that. Like it's programmed into it so that it doesn't always create 100%. And so until they take that out, it's not ever going to get better. So you're always going to have to proof check. In fact, I recently applied for a job that required a cover letter. I went to ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, and I hate writing cover letters, but it required it. And I wanted this job. So I was like, ChatGPT, here's my resume. Here's the job description. I need a cover letter, 1 page, so that I can send it to them so I don't have to waste time with this. And in the cover letter, it put things that I cannot do in it, right? And so if I had just saved it and sent it, it would have lied for me because I did not like it. For example, it says that I have trained people how to use Looker. I had trained people and I know how to use Looker, but I've never done those 2 things, right? And so it made that assumption that didn't exist. And so I don't think ChatGPT ever gets to a point where we don't have to review what it says. I don't think that happens, at least for 10 or 12 years, maybe 20. I think it's very far away.
I mean, the research on machine learning in general is still pretty new. So
yeah,
it definitely will make some mistakes, but I think if you just prompt it again, it will give you the correct answers.
From my experience, prompting it again just gives you the same answer in different words. Whomever you want to replace.
Oh, here, I don't know. I love that ChatGPT has learned to lie. I mean, that's what it is. The hallucinations are a lie.
Without malice, but yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was just quoted somewhere in the chat. They were quoting Einstein.
Information that can be easily referred should not be memorized.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the Pythagorean theorem. You don't have to rediscover it every time. You just need to apply it, right? Which is, again, I'm not a mathematician. So that's as far as I go with that analogy, right? Point being, I say, hey, write me a function that takes these parameters and does these things. Man, I don't want to waste my time on that. And I was talking, I mean, I mentor kids, so it's funny you're talking about high school students. So they didn't know what ChatGPT was. They had heard of it. This before it, and it's, I mean, even in the last like 6 months, they had not really heard of it. Yeah. And so we think, oh no, all the kids are going to go and use it and cheat on all their papers, etc. I haven't heard that be the case yet. It is happening where some kids are, writing papers that way. And so we're talking about it. And I said, I think ChatGPT is great. And they're like, well, would you use it? I go, well, I use it absolutely, because there's stuff I don't want to waste time on. And I know what I want to do, but I'm not entirely sure how to do it. And I use that to get some motivation or some inspiration on how I would take something. Like here's one piece that's blocking me, like a regex. And, I said, I think it'd be great if you used it to summarize anything. For example, forgetting the hallucinations, to take a book, and say, summarize, insert this Edgar Allan Poe, novel for me. And I specifically use Bing, because the thing I like about Bing with the hallucinations is that it gives me references for everything that it's telling me. So I go and I double check the references. So if it says something that doesn't smell right, I verify it. Yeah, we all know that. Trust, but verify, right? So, I was explaining to them, but don't write papers. Because the problem is if you have it write the paper for you, but you're ever asked to explain your paper, you didn't write it. So you're going to fail. And that's all a teacher has to do is say, okay, you read the paper. All right, tell me 5 points from your paper.
Well, and the cheating software is going to be high tech on that anyway, because a large language model can pick out large language model written text like 98% of the time. But people who try to pick out large language model text they get it better. They get it just over chance. So 52% of the time.
Mhm.
And with that, that means that if you have to hand it into something that checks for that stuff, it'll pick it out almost 100% of the time. So I don't think that becomes a huge problem because the technology is keeping up. Larger language models will keep track of them. So
Yeah.
I don't think that the cheating part will be too big of a deal.
Well, but I just wanted to finish this thought. Twofold. One, I have tried those detectors and I've never gotten it to detect what another large language model has written, including its own. But, I
The
mean,
research on it suggests that that's not the case.
Because there's websites that,
Sure.
advertise that, right?
Sure.
But, it'll be a good business. But, one of the issues is the people only use this to get through school. Not that it's necessarily our career, but who use it to get through school or any sort of task that must be completed where they're responsible end to end for it. I mean, you'll get found out when you end up having to support it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when you're tested, you'll fail because you can't use ChatGPT while you're taking your test.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever. Okay, Kenneth, go ahead and unmute yourself. You're ready.
All right. I think the bigger question is, how long will it be before we don't have to memorize anything? Where, committing ourselves to memorizing a certain topic is just a waste of time. Because, we have forums, we have chat rooms, we have search engines, we have ChatGPT, we have Co-Pilot platform, we have Bard, we have Claude. And, we're 10 months in. Who knows where we're going to be in the next 2 years? The GPT-4 architecture was just leaked the other day. So who knows what open source is going to do with that? I think, you know what? I think the education system, how it's currently taught, will have to be overhauled. Because who wants to write essays? I mean, really. I mean, if schooling is just about taking tests and getting a grade, then yes, students are gonna take the path of least resistance, which is gonna be some chatbot writing an essay. And yes, they can be easily circumvented. All you have to do for GPT-4 is write as a different author, or you can use a paper that you've written in the past, and then feed that in the code interpreter and say, like, use this writing signature and apply it to this subject, and it'll be bot detection 100% of the time. Not to mention the many AI based applications that'll do it for free just to beat the bot detection. So again, it comes back to how much do we really want our kids to memorize, and how long will it take industry to adjust? Because the interview process in software engineering, it's we all engineers, and we know that if you've been through the interview process with leak code and all that, there's a lot of BS, things that may or may not be pertaining to your job that you're going to be doing specifically, and that could be one of the reasons why junior developers don't graduate into senior developers, because we don't really encourage it, especially if you're going for like computer science. You may have one capstone project, two, maybe, but it's usually just pass this test, pass that test, write this essay, and it's not helping. And it certainly is not going to be any use, or very little use. I won't say no use. Very little use to tomorrow's thinking in terms of being able to prompt, being able to do research to solve a problem. Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, all I see is the dot have a border, not border. But anyway, yeah. My name's Kyle. I'm not experienced as in the IT world as everyone else in here, and don't have as much to really contribute. But I guess comments. I guess first thing make it lighten up a little is when someone mentioned AI art. I literally was at lunch Friday and someone was just introduced to that. I haven't played around with that here, but someone said, make Gandalf as he would be in a Wes Anderson movie. And it gave like a really cool versions of Gandalf. But anyway, one thing I do is I'm a part-time TA at an online university, helping people learn like the fundamentals of JavaScript, or like new to HTML, you know, the whole web development fundamentals. And the analogy I give to someone who's not in IT when they ask me, how do you catch if people are cheating or not when they're using assignment? The example I give is, when I was in high school, when you're in Spanish class, you could easily tell if someone used Google Translate or not versus writing it yourself, is because you didn't learn those tenses, those verbs, and, you know, wasn't really in like the confines of like the classroom. But whoever said the term like earned learning, like I like that kind of nugget, because like for me, for example, you know, there was someone who was using high order functions and arrow functions and stuff for an assignment, and was like, I know this hasn't been taught yet. And you know, you kind of gauge, you know, if that's something that they might have looked up, or, you know, citing sources, right? We encourage people, if you use something cool and slick, like at least say where you did it. But so for me, I guess I kind of like that approach of like earned learning. Like for me, when I'm like practicing like algorithm type questions, like a 3-number sum in an array or something, like I'll like ask ChatGPT, I'll say, without showing the code, and here's the problem, like how close am I on this? And then sometimes there might be a whole different approach with better performance, all the stuff you're saying, code analyzing, like, you know, to work your way up that. So that's all my kind of comments on that, but yeah.
Stay up.
Okay.
Kenneth, are you done?
I had something,
Yes.
but it just slipped my mind. I'll do it later if
Okay.
we have time.
Yeah. I revere people who have really put in the effort to learn something so well. Like, you know, and I think about, you know, time before me for sure, where people did so much effort to get to where, and I stand on top of the shoulder of giants, right? You get to inherit some of the things that they do, and you know, you didn't put in all the effort that they did, right? So it's kind of amazing. But the problems that I think we have today in the software industry are different problems, right? We live in a world right now that suffers more from fragmentation than it does from any one particular program being good or bad. You know, the difficulty is not necessarily how to write one program, it's how to get that program to work in a chain of workflows and interactions with other different things, whether it's integrations or third-party systems or dynamic events or anything that could be. All of these things become a very large system, some of which you control and some you do not. And you need to build more resilient and more ecosystem-friendly type software. ChatGPT, and even Co-Pilot X and things that can understand context, you know, that's a really large context. You know, at some point that doesn't actually, it's too big, you know, to put into your applicable problem. And so what I think we're going to have to evolve to when we talk about whether it's junior or senior or anything else is higher level system orchestration as software engineering. And I think that's a more interesting thing for me is, and I'm just curious, like how you or anybody else on the call, you know, are forgetting necessarily some of the topics about the mundane function building, but how does ChatGPT affect, you know, large system orchestration and or maybe not even ChatGPT, maybe whatever that comes next, you know, that's something thought about it all or anything?
No, I got nothing.
But yeah.
Probably got something to say though.
Good go. Good job.
Like what you were saying about moving on to further, more complex ideas. My interpretation of how ChatGPT is going to influence the industry is, I think it's going to make a further divide between juniors and seniors, simply because of the profit motive, right? I mean, you said yourself, you really only hire seniors. So
Most of the seniors. Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, but like I'm saying, that divide is only going to become greater. You're only going to hire even more seniors because of tools like ChatGPT, because the like someone said earlier, the barrier to entry is getting lower, and that's a great thing. At least in my view, at first sight, it is. But as that barrier to entry becomes lower and lower, ChatGPT isn't at a point where it's helping people coming in and using it as a learning tool, not just as something to, oh, let me just get the answer from this and plug it in. No, it's using it as a learning tool. There isn't, well, at least not yet, there isn't a gap, something that gaps between that and becoming mid or senior level developer, because I mean, with my experience, I went to Kenzie Academy in late 2019. That was a years long program. I was lucky enough to get a couple developer positions since then, and I was laid off March of last year, and I've just been having a hard time finding a new position since then. And it just seems like that even though the barrier to entry to learn code, learn methodologies to actually build whatever it may be, is getting lower, the bar to actually obtain a job is getting higher because of ChatGPT is bringing that down. It's like, so you're expected to know a lot more starting out than you would have, say, 5-10 years ago. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want, this is not a pitch for our company or anything like that, but we do hire junior developers for sure.
And that wasn't wasn't a dig on you. That was just.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, but when we hire junior developers, we're not really looking for what they, we have the old adage, like, what can you do, not what can't you do, right? So we're looking for them to solve a problem, for us, right? Just selfishly as a company, we want to solve a problem, And so we're hiring that role to solve a problem. And if that junior dev can solve that problem, then fantastic. That's great. We'd love to have more junior devs solving that problem. And then you say, how do you scope that problem? Are you asking too big of a problem or too much of it? Or are you, getting into a more narrow focused problem? What we try to do is try to get to a narrow focused problem. So that, if they can do this thing for us, which is an attainable thing, that pays their ticket. And then they can learn from there and grow into, pick up more skills and find other areas and so on. And so it's a good way for them to grow into it. I do think that there are some companies that, they want everything.
I was just about to say that. That seemed like a very idyllic situation as to, how would you would bring a junior developer on. That's just not the case, at least in my experience. It just hasn't been. They want an entire development team in one person. That's just the junior, and they're paying them,
that's
pennies
hard
on the
to
dollar.
do. I think that's really hard to do because, again, back to that fragmentation, things have become so fragmented that you have to have a lot of skill sets in order to build anything these days, it seems like, especially if you're at enterprise level, you're going to have to be pretty serious about each of the different areas. And it's hard to try to say that somebody, even senior devs, are going to cover that entire gambit. Because now you're talking about, we need front-end code, right? We need back-end code. We need infrastructure code. Well, okay, so we're talking, are we Angular, React? If it's React, is it with Redux? Is it with, something else? Are you doing XJS? Are you doing server-side rendering? Are you doing front-end rendering? If it's back-end, we're talking about, .NET. Okay, cool. Well, is it going to be like a CRUD style app, or are we talking about like event streaming? What is this thing that does, right? We've gotten so specialized, and now it takes 5, 6, 7 people minimum, it feels like, to put together a team to go build a product. I'm hoping that ChatGPT can, again, if you give somebody some more tools, maybe they can get to a certain, they can fill in some gaps. you know, and so that we can hire somebody who's more narrow, like focused on something that they can do well, but they can learn into the other areas. And maybe in the interim of that learning with other senior folks and so on, ChatGPT is actually helping to fill that gaps, unblocking them at points that they need to keep rolling, you know?
Yeah, and like it was mentioned earlier as well, like with the students about like ChatGPT getting to a point where it's like, why didn't you ask ChatGPT before bringing this situation up to me? Like some people, you know, think differently, and maybe hopefully one day ChatGPT will get to that point where it's a general purpose AI where you can just ask it whatever you want and get a decent answer back. Some people just need that interpersonal communication with someone else to have that immediate bounce back and not have to think so much into the prompt so much as being able to just ask the question and then have the other person interpret the question in the context of their development work.
I honestly think collaboration, and we kind of talked about don't take the people out of this process. Collaboration and being able to have the courage to ask the questions and come up with the questions, that's their skill set in asking the right questions, right? Forgetting ChatGPT, just in human interaction, I think, right?
Yeah.
And I would value that over siloed, go figure it out on your own kind of deal, whether you're using ChatGPT or not. So I think the collaboration part is really good. I think what the gentleman said about, you know, did you ChatGPT it first? It kind of made me chuckle because I was thinking of let me Google that for you, you know, right? So there's probably going to be like a let me ChatGPT that for you. And there are certainly things that, you know, you're like, you can tell a difference from somebody asking a question and somebody kind of being lazy, you know? And I think we want to take the lazy out of it and ask good questions.
Tell them what.
Oh,
Two at once.
yeah, nice. We got 10 minutes. I'm glad. I think we need to do more of these fish bowls. These are fun. So something that, a couple things. One, ChatGPT and its ilk are large language models. We call them AI, but they only work with what they've been trained on. I can tell you, because I ran my own local instance using OpenAI's ChatGPT, I think it was 3.5, and I trained it on 14 pages from my website. And it authoritatively told me things from my website. I asked what to do when Bluetooth doesn't work. And it told me, well, if it doesn't work after you try these 3 steps, which it got in I don't even think it was the right order, you should call Phonak support, because it was an article about hearing aids. So it didn't come out and say, oh, well, I'm going to go check the internet. You know, I could be wrong. It's not AI. It's a language model. We like to say AI. That's cool and it sells things. But that being said, it's as dumb as it's only as smart as its data pool. Thank God it has a huge, large data pool, and we won't give it to the images that it might generate. So that gets to my point that ChatGPT and its ilk cannot be creative. I can say, hey, you know, 3 of you wrote a similar application. Say, take the best approach and build on it. It would say, I don't know how to do that. It could summarize each one for you, but that's it. So I think one of the powers of being a software engineer is that we are both logical and creative. ChatGPT takes care of the logic part. It's very good at taking a problem, which is look at this, tell me what you think of it. But when it comes to solving that problem, the creativity part, all the different paths that you might take and what the intention of this code might have been when the developer originally thought about it. Maybe years from now when there's true AI work.
Well, that's going to tie into exactly why I came up here. I was thinking of time travel in the sense, let's think about 10 years from now. It's 2033. We've had 10 years of using ChatGPT and any iterations that come. You'll have a whole new generation of developers that have used ChatGPT all along. Is there any worry or fear that innovation or creativity or artistry in software development will be muted because you've got a generation of developers that are running into a problem and popping that question in and finding code from 10, 12 years ago that solves that problem? But there's the artistry is gone, the innovation is gone. Or do you see that as being a problem? Because I really do feel like software development is artistry. I mean, yeah, you can equate it to painting. You know, yeah, I can take a canvas and I can paint, but you bring Picasso in, his is going to look a little bit better than mine. You know, and it's the same concept with development. There are going to be certain people out there that are just artists at what they do. And is that going to be muted as time goes on? And you've got more people relying on ChatGPT, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a crutch, but maybe it kind of is.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you took a tool and you did something with it, I mean, that's you're. I don't know if I compare you and Picasso. You know, I've never seen you paint, so I can't say.
Well, I have.
You know,
Not
you know,
No,
and I'd be curious if like today, if I could, you know, take like your painting and Picasso's painting and ask, you know, like an image analysis model, you know, which is a large language model, it'd be like a large image model or generative AI. Which one's better? I still don't think it could tell me.
Right.
You know, it could say, you know, this one has these details, this one has these details, and I can make something that looks like either one of them or both of them. But when it comes to it having an opinion, I don't think it could do it. Yeah. It still gets right back to summaries, you know, what a computer is very good at, you know, data processing. And I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have the tools that we have today, right? And I mean, you hire senior developers, you know, if you had senior developers that refuse to use any tools, you know, like productivity tools, would you hire them? You know, I mean, you wouldn't, because, you know, the developers of 10 years from now will have grown up with, you know, or learned to live with these tools that we have today, you know, that are coming out, these burgeoning tools on top of all the tools that they have. I think if anything, we'll have better, more performant, more reliable, more secure code. Yeah, you only hired senior developers. What does a senior developer look like 10 years from now? Yeah, I know. I'm not beating you up over that, but like, what is a
Sorry, it's part of that.
what does a junior developer look like 10 years from now? You know, when you graduate from school 10 years from now, will you be like, I don't know why anyone ever wrote boilerplate code. I just don't get it. Yeah, it's like, you know, when you build a website, you know, like using Squarespace, it can't generate the content for you, you know, that you want to use to market your product, you know, or how you want your prices, what you want your prices to be. It can't do any of that stuff. It can't be creative or think about the big picture business model. But it can take care of all the minutia for you. Yeah, and it'll save me time. So I think if anything, 10 years from now, you're going to have more efficient developers, you know, that just cut the bullshit and go, you know what, I had a tool and every time I wrote code, because, you know, code is about logic. And then of course, you know, most of your time you're debugging, not writing code, like I said before. Yeah. Boy, I would love it if something told me how to write better code, because my day is easier and I can work on more fun problems. Yeah. And does that mean that you end up having less work to do? Yeah. Does that mean that you eventually finish your job and the company has no more work for you to do? Yeah, that's a possibility. But you know what? That was going to happen anyway. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you know, the organization needs, if you're like in a consulting firm, you have to finish the project. Project doesn't go on forever. You don't get unlimited budget. You know, and if you're in a business, you know, once you've built the software for a product, you know, once you're done maintaining it, and the product is good as it is, they really only have need for people who will do maintenance, which will be the one senior engineer that he only hires. And kidding. But it's just like, would you ever want a car that, always breaks down so someone has a job? Or, yeah, I'd say more Dodge or it's my experience. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess when that goes back to the one question that I think was asked right at the beginning, will AI eliminate jobs? And so we're thinking based on that in the future could very well.
I think it'll accelerate the ends of projects.
So,
is
it possible to get 10, 15, 20 years down the road where I could essentially be a content manager that I walk in on day one and say, look, ChatGPT version 412, I want you to create me a website that's built in whatever language. I needed to do this, that, and the other. And 98% of it's done. The only thing I got to worry about is what content's going to be in there, or that logic that I need to set market prices, like you mentioned earlier. Do we get to that point at some point? And then you really are just a room full of content managers because you've got a tool that can build everything for you.
Well, and that's a great question. So one, if it could build 98% of what you need done, there's probably already a solution out there that does what you want. I mean, if you already know 98% can be built by a computer, that's Squarespace. I mean, all the hosting, the pricing, the credit card processing, the item management, the bill management, the customer service, the support forums, the live chat, all that stuff. It's all done for you. You don't need ChatGPT to do that. That's what a service provider does. I don't even think you would come to a ChatGPT and say, build me a website, because you'd have to hire someone to maintain it. You'd have to hire someone to manage it. You'd have to hire someone to deploy it, make sure the code was right and compiles. So I don't think you would do that.
Well, and yeah, right. Not necessarily for a website. I'm talking maybe applications that do something that, maybe it's a desktop application of some sort or whatever the case may be. But
All right. 8 o'clock, final comments.
Oh, gosh, this is where you should open up to the floor and go, have you all learned something?
I just wondered,
Yeah.
did a big group of people sit in a room years ago and go, is the computer going to do this?
Yeah.
Did we sit and, is the calculator going to do this, since we're moving from the abacus to the calculator?
Automation, yep.
This conversation has happened a million times over
It'll
time.
happen a
Something else
million
has
more.
always risen, right?
Yeah, the internet's going to put us all out of a job.
Yeah.
Microsoft's going to be shut down because Google is, the internet is the operating system of the future. Even though Google's not an operating
The
system.
great thing is behind all of it is human ingenuity.
Yeah, and that
And,
creativity has
Yeah,
driven
you
us.
You cannot program that away.
I have a question. You guys have seen my resume. There's a lot of contract. Some of them are contract to hire, 2 months. There was 6-month contract to hire. 2 months later, I got the job done, so I was gone. Is it gonna mean that I'll be hired for a month and have to look for another job?
I mean, it's certainly possible that you end up, going and becoming a Fiverr jockey, where you're just doing, Fiverr-like jobs, but at the same time,
It costs money to hire a computer programmer.
oh, weird.
You know?
Oh, lost it. It didn't even beep at me. Oh, well. So I'm sure it's important. I'll plug it in later and end the whole thing.
It costs money to hire a computer programmer as well.
Sorry, we got most of the comments out, right? Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Nicole, which is, it's creativity. Yeah, the computers can't think for themselves. They can only think on what we've, programmed them, to think. It's pretty interesting to see how that plays out. But I'm excited. I think, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just old enough that 10 years from now, maybe I won't care. But I'll be like, that's for the young people to worry about. I'm gonna vote and ruin their lives. But bingo. But I think we're gonna be more efficient, better developers. And I think we're gonna have to work less hours. Consulting wise, eventually the project ends. At the end of the day, every project you ever work on will end, and if a company doesn't have work for you to do, then why would they keep paying you?
Right.
Yeah.
Pay you to place out there.
Yeah, it's not a charity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
everyone cares about their people, but Microsoft employs all those people because they keep turning out products that are sold. Yeah, they'll sit them, keeping them around going, man, I really love all these people. Yeah, because their shareholders would never have it. In a private business, you still have to look at, there's gonna be downturns. So, unless you've got, you're a multi-billionaire like Elon Musk or, Jeff Bezos or whatever, and you could build a company that you don't give a shit, if I lose my money, I lose my money, but okay. Well, gosh, no, even them. Yeah, I mean, when the work is done,
Yep.
when the work is done, that's all you get, And
Business has no feelings.
So guys, thanks so much for coming out. Please, I hope you enjoyed the fishbowl. We have a speaker set up for the next couple months, but we'll probably do this again.
yeah, I think
before the
every
end of the
like
year,
3
like
months or so,
November,
like,
probably
I think
November.
what we tend to do is, like on the 3rd or 4th month, we'll do a lightning talks, or we'll do lightning talks, and then the following month we'll do fishbowl. Or some campfire discussion. Like campfire discussions are cool because everyone talks. Yeah, but sometimes so many people are talking, it's just unruly, which is why the fishbowl is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And I think I might have done it wrong. I'm curious. I need to look it up and see if you're supposed to have 3 people sitting up here with 1 open chair. And then what happens is like 10 minutes before it ends, you remove 1 chair. Now you got 2 people, and then you leave 1 person awkwardly up there.
That sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, go make sure you go first.
Yeah.
No, I think this worked out really well.
No,